of us will go." Mary faced him with a sick and frightened expression. "I know it. You're going to the surface, aren't you?" She followed him into the kitchen. Taylor sat down, looking away from her. "It's a classified project," he evaded. "I can't tell you anything about it." "You don't have to tell me. I know. I knew it the moment you came in. There was something on your face, something I haven't seen there for a long, long time. It was an old look." She came toward him. "But how can they send you to the surface?" She took his face in her shaking hands, making him look at her. There was a strange hunger in her eyes. "Nobody can live up there. Look at this." She grabbed up a newspaper and held it in front of him. "Look at this photograph. America, Europe, Asia, Africa. Nothing but ruins. We've seen it every day on the show screens. All destroyed, poisoned. And they're sending you up. Why? No living thing can get by up there. Not even a weed or grass. They've wrecked the surface, haven't they? Haven't they?" Taylor stood up. "It's an order. I know nothing about it. I was told to report, to join a scout party. That's all I know." He stood for a long time staring ahead. Slowly he reached for the newspaper and held it up to the light. "It looks real," he murmured. "Ruins, deadness, slag. It's convincing. All the reports, photographs, films, even air samples. Yet we haven't seen it for ourselves. Not after the first months." "What are you talking about?" "Nothing." He put the paper down. "I'm leaving early after the next sleep period. Let's turn in." Mary turned away, her face hard and harsh. "Do what you want. We might just as well all go up and get killed at once, instead of dying slowly down here, like vermin in the ground." He had not realized how resentful she was. Were they all like that? How about the workers toiling in the factories day and night, endlessly? The pale, stooped men and women plodding back and forth to work, blinking in the colorless light, eating synthetics. "You shouldn't be so bitter," he said. Mary smiled a little. "I'm bitter because I know you'll never come back." She turned away. "I'll never see you again, once you go up there." He was shocked. "What? How can you say a thing like that?" She did not answer. He awakened with the public newscaster screeching in his ears, shouting outside the building. "Special news bulletin. Surface forces report enormous Soviet attack with new weapons. Retreat of key groups. All work units report to factories at once." Taylor blinked, rubbing his eyes. He jumped out of bed and hurried to the vidphone. A moment later he was put through to Moss. "Listen," he said. "What about this new attack? Is the project off?" He could see Moss's desk covered with reports and papers. "No," Moss said. "We're going right ahead. Get over here at once." "But—" "Don't argue with me." Moss held up a handful of surface bulletins, crumbling them savagely. "This is a fake. Come on." He broke off. Taylor dressed furiously, his mind in a daze. Half an hour later he leaped from a fast car and hurried up the stairs into the Synthetics Building. The corridors were full of men and women rushing in every direction. He entered Moss's office. "There you are," Moss said, getting up immediately. "Franks is waiting for us at the outgoing station." They went in a security car, the sirens screaming. Workers scattered out of their way. "What about the attack?" Taylor asked. Moss braced his shoulders. "We're certain that we've forced their hand. We've brought the issue to a head." They pulled up at the station link of the tube and leaped out. A moment later they were moving up at high speed toward the first stage. They emerged into a bewildering scene of activity. Soldiers were fastening on lead suits, talking excitedly to each other, shouting back and forth. Guns were being given out, instructions passed. Taylor studied one of the soldiers. He was armed with the dreaded Bender pistol, the new snub-nosed hand weapon that was just beginning to come from the assembly line. Some of the soldiers looked a little frightened. "I hope we're not making a mistake," Moss said, noticing his gaze. Franks came toward them. "Here's the program. The three of us are going up first, alone. The soldiers will follow in 15 minutes." "What are we going to tell the leadys?" Taylor worriedly asked. "We'll have to tell them something." "We want to observe the new Soviet attack," Franks smiled ironically. "Since it seems to be so serious, we should be there in person to witness it." And then what? Taylor said. That'll be up to them. Let's go. In a small car they went swiftly up the tube carried by anti-grav beams from below. Taylor glanced down from time to time. It was a long way back, and getting longer each moment. He sweated nervously inside his suit, gripping his Bender pistol with inexpert fingers. Why had they chosen him? Chance, poor Chance. Moss had asked him to come along as a department member. Then Franks had picked him out on the spur of the moment. And now they were rushing toward the surface, faster and faster. A deep fear instilled in him for 8 years throbbed in his mind. Radiation. Certain death. A world blasted and lethal. Up and up the car went. Taylor gripped the sides and closed his eyes. Each moment they were closer. The first living creatures to go above the first stage, up the tube past the lead and rock, up to the surface. The phobic horror shook him in waves. It was death, they all knew that. Hadn't they seen it in the films 1,000 times? The cities, the sleet coming down, the rolling clouds. It won't be much longer, Frank said. We're almost there. The surface tower is not expecting us. I gave orders that no signal was to be sent. The car shot up, rushing furiously. Taylor's head spun. He hung on, his eyes shut. Up and up. The car stopped. He opened his eyes. They were in a vast room, fluorescent lit, a cavern filled with equipment and machinery, endless mounds of material piled in row after row. Among the stacks, leadys were working silently, pushing trucks and hand carts. Leadys, Moss said. His face was pale. Then we're really on the surface. The leadys were going back and forth with equipment, moving the vast stores of guns and spare parts, ammunition and supplies that had been brought to the surface. And this was the receiving station for only one tube. There were many others scattered throughout the continent. Taylor looked nervously around him. They were really there, above ground, on the surface. This was where the war was. Come on, Frank said. A B-class guard is coming our way. They stepped out of the car. A leady was approaching them rapidly. It coasted up in front of them and stopped, scanning them with its hand weapon raised. This is security, Frank said. Have an A-class sent to me at once. The leady hesitated. Other B-class guards were coming, scooting across the floor, alert and armed. Moss peered around. Obey, Frank said in a loud, commanding voice. You've been ordered. The leady moved uncertainly away from them. At the end of the building a door slid back. 2 A-class leadys appeared, coming slowly toward them. Each had a green stripe across its front. From the Surface Council, Franks whispered tensely. This is above ground, all right. Get set. The 2 leadys approached warily. Without speaking, they stopped close by the men, looking them up and down. I'm Franks of security. We came from undersurface in order to...
This is incredible.
One of the leadys interrupted him coldly.
You know you can't live up here. The whole surface is lethal to you. You can't possibly remain on the surface.
These suits will protect us, Frank said. In any case, it's not your responsibility. What I want is an immediate council meeting so I can acquaint myself with conditions, with the situation here. Can that be arranged?
You human beings can't survive up here. And the new Soviet attack is directed at this area. It is in considerable danger.
We know that. Please assemble the council. Franks looked around him at the vast room, lit by recessed lamps in the ceiling. An uncertain quality came into his voice. Is it night or day right now?
Night.
One of the A-class leadys said after a pause.
Dawn is coming in about 2 hours.
Franks nodded. We'll remain at least 2 hours then. As a concession to our sentimentality, would you please show us some place where we can observe the sun as it comes up? We would appreciate it. A stir went through the leadys.
It is an unpleasant sight,
one of the leadys said.
You've seen the photographs. You know what you'll witness. Clouds of drifting particles blot out the light. Slag heaps are everywhere. The whole land